Okay. Hey everybody!
Hey guys, we want to welcome you back to the second part of our multiple series study called Living Stone.
Living Stone. Guess who's back this time? I've got somebody with me. So Travis is here, so I'm excited. I just want to reintroduce ourselves in case you stumbled upon this video somehow and you don't know who we are. My name is Kendra Ketter-Chavis.
And I'm Travis.
And we are the planting pastors for Capacity Church. It's a church plant that is being developed here in Nashville, Tennessee, and wherever else God leads. And so we're just excited. We just wanted to have an opportunity to just sit and kind of in a relaxed setting. We are in just a comfortable space because we know that's probably where you are, to just kind of talk about a passage that's been on our heart, and it's coming from 1 Peter 2.
Yep.
And so we just wanted to chat a little bit.
Yeah, so last week Kendra did a phenomenal book study on the same passage where she walked us through what does it mean for Jesus to be the cornerstone of our life.
Yeah.
And so this week we're going to do a second part of that where we look at it in a little bit different light. And we're going to look specifically at verses 11 through 17.
We're going for the hard stuff this week, y'all. So I know, I think at the end of the last week's study, I talked a little bit about that this week we would be going into the idea of rejection. But Travis and I were talking when we were studying, and he was like, I've got a problem with some stuff in this chapter.
Yeah.
So being the people we are, we like adventure. So we were like, let's go to the hard thing. But we really were trying to be thoughtful about it. And so I'm going to read it. And then maybe, do you want to share your first thoughts on it?
Yeah.
So we're just going to get into it. So again, if you have a notebook, this will be a great time to grab it, just to jot down your thoughts or anything that comes to mind. Grab your Bible app, or just listen to us read it. And so I'm just going to read these few verses to share with you. So I'm going to come from 1 Peter chapter 2. And I'm going to begin with, verse 11. So here we go. Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. Submit yourself to the Lord's sake, to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence ignorant talk of foolish people. Live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor. So let's just try. Do you want to share? Because I'm sure people have heard this text, and especially the verses that come after, and we're going to cover that a bit, but have heard this text and had the same thoughts. So what do you want to share?
I mean,
the gentle version of your thoughts.
It was a really difficult text.
Yeah, for sure.
To get behind. I think also the fact that I read two different versions of it, right? So I read the Message version and the New Living Translation version. And so when you hear it spoken in those versions, you're like, wait a minute. Like,
I'm gonna pull it.
Like, some of this I can get behind. And then some of this, we just need to talk about this a little bit. Like, Peter, we need to hash this out. And I think when we read scripture, I think it's only natural sometimes for us to try and look at where we are in life, right? And during our current climate.
Yeah.
And, you know, being black, it is...
You're black?
I am. Being black, it is something that was a little bit difficult for me to understand.
For sure.
So we had to have a conversation about it and look at it, and I think you put it in a very good way.
Yeah,
for me to understand. So
I was gonna read that, but you can. I want to just invite you, if you want to read those versions, you can. It's the Message version and the New Living Translation. What I read was the New International Version, NIV. And so we talked about that, right? Just he and I were just chatting about the fact that sometimes we have to pull ourselves back a bit, because I know this passage is troubling. It troubled me for a long time, but we have scriptures written in context. And so it was written to a particular people at a particular time in a particular place, right? They had their own climate and a lot of things going on. And so that doesn't mean that it's not applicable to our lives today. It just means, God, how do you apply this to where I am right now, to the season, to the climate, to the culture, to the context that I'm in, right? And so I think maybe we should give a little bit of the background, because what it sounds like can be a little scary. This text has been used, we know, in the American context, often for things like to justify
wrong
black captivity, African captivity, otherwise known as slavery. We know it was used for just all sorts of abuses of people who are marginalized, for indigenous people. And so it's really important to dissect this, because you have to take that power back from the enemy and not allow him to abuse God's word. So just let's think about this for a little bit. So let's just talk about that. Context. So Peter, this letter is written from Peter, and he's writing to the exiles who have been dispersed. So essentially, this is a time where Christians were being persecuted by Nero. He was a Roman emperor. He was awful. And so there's an interesting story behind it. So when we read this, we often are like, we look immediately at whatever political climate we might be in at the time and whatever side of the aisle we might be on, and we're like, it's awful. So you're trying to tell me that to be a good Christian, I'm supposed to go along with injustice. I'm supposed to go along with injustice, with people who are being unfairly treated, people who are being seen in need and being stepped over, people who don't have just their basic human rights being honored. I'm supposed to, as a Christian, be okay with that and just be quiet and lead like this life where I say nothing. That's not what this is about. So you have to think about, first of all, who was writing it. This is Peter, y'all. And Travis and I was like, Travis, you do remember this is Peter writing this. I don't know if y'all remember. Peter was like Jesus' thug life apostle. Like, he was not playing about Jesus. Like, he was serious. He is the same one who cut off the soldier's ear when he stepped to Jesus the wrong way, right? And Jesus is like, no, this is part of the plan. Like, I gotta put this ear back, right? This is that Peter who would wild out for God. And so this is by no means somebody who is gonna roll over and be docile in the face of anything that opposes the heart of God for us, right? And this, of course, is a more mature Peter who has grown. He's been through a lot, and he is writing to these exiles who, Nero, the emperor, I want to get to that, who was, you think that you have complaints about whatever leadership is in your country or in your state or in your local city. You think you have complaints about whoever they are. This man was a hot mess. He was evil, and he took great pride in not being seen as any other way. So Nero is known for burning people alive, having people eaten alive by dogs, right? Using people literally as human torches to burn down other things. So he was very intense in this persecution. As a matter of fact, there was a great fire in Rome, and historians believe that he had the fire set so that he could rebuild his palace in the center of the city, right? Rebuild a brand new palace. And as a distraction, right, from this, he blamed the Christians, right? There was already this contention between the Jews and the new believers, right? The people who had converted, and he burned it down and blamed them. And so they began being persecuted, and they were dispersed, right? So this was an awful man. And Peter knows this when he's writing to these people. And he says, listen, he writes this letter, and he's talking about what does it mean to live like Christ in these different settings, in these places where this belief system is not the way, in a place where people are hostile towards what you believe and are waiting for a moment to say something, right? And so he's giving them a warning. And Travis and I, we had a great kind of example of what this was. So the part where no, go for it. Yeah, the talk.
Yeah, it's the talk. It's he's giving them the talk. The talk.
Yeah. What's the talk?
The talk that parents of color have to give their kids.
Yeah.
When you leave, like, just to make sure that they come home safely.
Yeah, essentially, right? Yeah. So, like, if you are a person of color, you know what the talk is. If you are not and you're watching this, just to be clear, and if you haven't heard it before, the talk is what in this American context, what parents of color, particularly black and brown parents, have to give their children.
Yeah.
And that's really just, it's informing them of, this is the kind of context that we live in. And this context is hostile towards you for no other reason than the fact that you exist.
Black or brown.
That you're black or brown. And so you give them this talk, not to make them angry, but to make them aware and to make them cautious. Yeah. And so often that includes things like how to engage with the police, how to engage if you are...
How to act in public.
How to act in public. If you get in trouble at school with the principal, how to deal with authority figures. Right? And so here's a great example. It's much like when a black or brown parent tells their child, hey, if you get pulled over by an officer, be respectful, do what they're asking you to do, give them your license, give them your paperwork, and if they are disrespectful to you, if they violate your rights, just stay calm, come home and tell me immediately, and I will go take care of it, right? You would never tell that parent that they are telling their child to be weak. You wouldn't tell that parent that they're telling their child to roll over. Their heart's desire is to get their child home safe and then pursue justice, right? Peter is doing the same things. He knows these believers are in danger. He's like, these people are literally burning y'all alive. They are looking for a reason to harm you. So I want you to do everything you can to live peaceably. Honor the people who are in authority. Show respect for the people who've been put in position to lead. Right? And he's telling them, like, he's giving them some practical wisdom. But he's also giving them some spiritual guidance. Because in this, he's like, you have an opportunity that even in the midst of this, you can set the example. Even in the midst of this, you can look like Christ. Even in the midst of this, we can still win souls because they think they stopped us, but what they don't know is they just gave us more opportunity to be dispersed and to spread it, right? And so we just wanted to make that point and say that this is not a text where we're saying don't pursue justice. The heart of God is for love and justice and mercy and compassion, period. This is not about not pursuing justice. This text is about how. And as believers, there's a particular way.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you can't... This text is difficult, but it's also good.
Yeah, for
right?
Sure.
Because I think that the thing about the talk is, as a parent, when you have that conversation with your child, what you're essentially doing is you're equipping yourself to be able to defend your child when it's necessary.
Come on, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if the child retaliates the same way as the person who is doing the retaliating, the assault, the defense, right? If they're doing the same thing as the other person, and the other person's in the position of authority, then the blame gets put on the victim. It's
imbalanced power.
It's imbalanced power. And so I think that
for sure.
although it was hard for me to understand, I understood it when we put it in the context of a parent talking to a child. Yeah. Right?
And so when we think about living stone, we were just going through this, and what does that mean? This is particularly important in not just we're not just talking about our political context. We're talking about at your job. We're talking about wherever it is that you might be, where you might be facing some sort of opposition, some sort of hostility. God might have called you to an industry where there are not a lot of believers and there's a lot of resistance to the faith. And God might have put you there for a particular reason, right? But that reason is remembering that reason. Yeah. That reason is to be the light in the dark place. It doesn't mean to condemn, to judge, to say, I got to get out of here. No, like, stay where God has planted you and grow. But it's really begging the question, how, in whatever space I'm in that might be difficult, what does it mean to be the light? What does it mean to be a living stone in the midst of a bunch of rubble? What does it mean, right, to be something that represents being built up in the midst of things that seem just shattered? First, we should always be seekers of justice and righteousness in places. Do not, if you've missed anything, don't miss this part. That God's heart is for us to pursue what is right and what is good for all people, not just for ourselves, right? So it's not enough if our life is good, if we're at work and people are being fair to us and they're treating, the person in the next cubicle like a dog, right? So, and that also doesn't mean that you go through and like act a fool at work. Right. Also not that, right? You gotta eat. You still gotta eat, and it's not gonna accomplish what you want. But it's how do you do it? And so just even thinking about what does that mean? There's several verses in it, and we just pulled up some things like that God has called us to this. So Micah 6:8, right? That what does the Lord require of you? To do justice. Not to think about it. It's not an idea. It's not this lofty goal. To do justice, to love mercy. Some translations say to love kindness, and to walk humbly. That's the part we often leave out, right? But we have to do all of those things. We have to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly, right? And so in all these verses, it's telling us how Jesus even says, right, that I've come. The point of me coming is to proclaim good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, to recover sight to the blind, to set the oppressed free. So on every turn, right, we know that we're called to an active faith, not a passive faith. Travis just preached on that on Sunday, right? That faith should be
that active. We are active, right? The word love, like when we think of love is an action. When we think of love being the greatest of the commandments, right? We look at the word commandment and we break it down into command, but then you also have that suffix M-E-N-T. And that M-E-N-T takes that word command and now makes it into the result of the action. Right? So you can't have a commandment if you never obeyed the command.
Right. If you don't, there are no results from the action. There should be a result from the action. Something should happen. Right. And so our faith should be an active faith. And so that's why we're emphasizing that this isn't about rolling over it when it's difficult, being a living stone, understanding when Peter is trying to compare us to Christ and saying, just like Christ is a living stone, you also, he's saying, and in this area, this is what it looks like. It means being the thing that's different. It means in the environment where everything is chaos, something should be different about you. People should be looking like, what is it about them? Like, what is it? Why are you so calm and we so mad? Or like, why when you are speaking up and you're defending, what's right, why is it that they'll listen to you, but they don't listen to me, right? There should be a difference because we're called to be, right, these culture changers, culture shifters, culture makers, not just culture followers, right? So as believers, we should be creating culture, not just following. So if everybody else is acting crazy, there should be something different about how we go about doing these things, right? So the how is important. The way we seek justice is important. It should set us apart. The way that we engage in a difficult job should set us apart, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you've heard everything that we said, you've heard why this text was difficult, how you should apply it. And so I think the practical thing is that if you find yourself where you need to give your own self the talk before you go in, you need to tell yourself, listen, I need this job. They letting people go, but this ain't right.
Or I can't get arrested down at Target.
You need to have yourself to talk. And I think that it's important that at the end of the day, what Peter is saying is that the way you handle things should be a reflection of the one you serve.
Come on, right? Because it's I think we mentioned when we were studying this that you can go about doing things, seeking what's right, seeking what's just in situations. You can do it without Jesus. It's completely possible, right? And it can work and it can be fine. But here's the thing. It's about who are you trying to draw people to? right? Because are you trying to build a fan club or are you trying to build a kingdom?
Yeah.
Because without Jesus, you're just building a fan club. People might love the way you articulate, love the way that you are passionate, love the way that you say and do things. But when you're talking about building the kingdom, which is what our lives being poured out every day should look like, should be trying to accomplish, that means you have to have Jesus as the model, as the example. It means we have to look at hard texts like this and say, what does it mean for me to be in a place where I may be the person that they're attempting to marginalize, but how do I put my faith in the center of this situation and declare who I am, whose I am, and know that I have the right to speak truth into this situation? Because we are building the kingdom, y'all. We are living stones building something, and we cannot get distracted by the rubble.
So guys, we hope you have enjoyed this video.
Learn something.
We'll have another one coming to you next week.
Yes, excited about it. If you have some family, friends that are in the Nashville area and Tennessee area, and they are just curious about what new things God is doing around here, have them reach out to us. We love to have coffee, just chat, just share how God is moving our hearts, and they can just reach us at capacity.church or capacitychurch@gmail.com. We would love to chat, and thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. We will see you next time.